The views and opinions expressed within the following program are solely those of the individual. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of Shaw TV.
In Calgary, today is January 10th. I'm Kevin Chorney, and this is Calgary Now. Homelessness. It's an issue that plagues every city, and every city has its own unique challenges to address the issue. Calgary's 10-year plan to end homelessness is a lofty goal, one that requires the cooperation of all levels of government and the collaboration between city services and nonprofit agencies to pull it off. Housing first is a top priority for many agencies, but it's not the whole solution, particularly for the segment of the homeless population that suffers from mental illness and addiction. Making sure they're able to access treatment as well as gain employment are also important. With these challenges in mind, how do police, the healthcare system, and frontline workers work together to ensure no person living on the streets falls through the cracks? Each year, some $320 million is spent in our city caring for, policing, treating, and many times jailing the homeless. Countless police man-hours and resources are utilized in what is essentially a revolving door, incarcerating for petty crimes those who suffer from addiction and mental health illness, only to have them back on the street within a day. 85% of Calgary's homeless report that they're addicted to alcohol and drugs, and 70% report mental health issues. And what about housing? Is there real opportunity for those living on the street, looking to make a better lives for themselves? Homelessness is one of those issues that, frankly, with good government and sound legislation in place, doesn't need to be an issue at all. We've got an excellent panel of guests tonight, all set to discuss this complex issue of homelessness. As always, we invite you to join the discussion by tweeting at Calgary Now Show or by speaking with us over the phone at 539-6710. Stay with us.
I think it's extremely important to focus on homelessness in Calgary. I think that the 10-year plan to end homelessness is fantastic. I think it's maybe a little bit aggressive in terms of saying it's going to end homelessness, because I don't think you actually can unless you can eliminate all of the problems that cause homelessness, and I don't think that's possible. But I definitely think, you know, since 2008 we've seen 4,000 people that have been helped by this and have been, you know, they're off the streets now because of this program alone, this plan alone. I think that's fantastic. So as long as we can kind of keep focusing on an actual structured kind of plan, then I totally think we're heading in the right direction.
Welcome back to the show. Tonight we're fortunate enough to have Deputy Chief Trevor Daru joining us once again, along with Constable Matt Ball of the Police and Crisis Team, and Sue Fortune, Director of the Pathway to Housing Program at the Alex. Thanks very much for being here, all of you.
Thanks for having us.
Roads are terrible. We appreciate the effort tonight.
The roads are bad.
Sue, I'd like to start with you. Just how easy is it to become homeless in Calgary?
I think it's actually quite easy to become homeless in Calgary. I think at any given time, the Calgary Homeless Foundation would report that probably 14% of the population in Calgary has either experienced homeless or has come very close to being homeless. I think some of the factors that can lead a person into homelessness can be changing in their housing situation if their rents are going up and they can't afford to pay it, sudden eviction. I think there can be some family factors such as fleeing domestic violence. I think that coming to the Calgary area, seeking employment, people don't really fully understand the lack of affordable housing in the city. And then at the Pathways to Housing program, of course, our clients are experienced homelessness due to significant mental illness diagnosis as well as active addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into the mental illness. We will actually in a bit of depth here. The average Calgarian seems to avoid the homeless. It seems to be an issue that not a lot of people want to pay too much attention to, unfortunately. Other than doing that, dodging the homeless in the street, how are these people ostracized? How is the system kind of letting them down currently? It's an open question if you want to jump on that, Trevor.
You know, there's a lot of different programs that are available, but unfortunately, they operate in isolation sometimes. So we need to create a system that's going to address the homeless issues. And various programs like Pathways, there's other programs within the city that do a great job, and it's about connecting those people to the assistance that they need, and ultimately to transfer them through the homeless system into housing where they can actually become productive citizens.
Yeah, and it is a lot of work. I know, of course, you guys, your program focuses solely, essentially on that. I think it's important to know that the system doesn't necessarily, drop the ball when people are homeless. You know, it's important to realize that, you know, apparently 40% of the people on the street were raised in foster homes. Clearly, this is something that should probably be looked at a bit closer. Would you not agree, Matt?
Yep, I do. And actually, I wanted to add to your first question. The homeless and specifically mentally ill are very stigmatized. Being on the front lines and dealing with people with severe illness, it's been an eye-opener for me to see the humanity behind these people, but yet the way they are stigmatized. And I think you asked what kind of contributes to that, or why do the average Calgarians not interact with the homeless? A lot of times when there are major events that can be shocking, I think sometimes those events are sent to a category. People like to categorize things, and they might be blamed on mental illness. When in fact, my unit deals with the mentally ill who fall below the cracks, and they are far less violent than the regular population. So I think people get their ideas about certain things about addiction.
Is that the biggest misconception about the homeless? I'm sure there's probably a few. I'd like to touch on whatever comes to mind first. I think for sure, I mean, one of them maybe that's why people are voting the homeless, because, well, this person potentially may be violent towards me. Another maybe this person's lazy. What do you see? What do you hear from people?
I think a lot of times you hear people exactly that. It impacts their perception of safety. They don't feel safe, notwithstanding the person's just homeless and either looking for attention, looking for help, or doing something, and people perceive that to be dangerous, and so they'll call the police. And for too long, I think the police have just performed a traditional role of, we get the homeless person, we arrest the homeless person, we take them for whatever action they did, and then they get incarcerated, and then the cycle just continues. And it's about breaking that cycle. How do you deal with the issues around homelessness, the mental health issues, the addiction issues?
That's right.
And it's important that we can start dealing with that in a different way and get them out of that vicious cycle that we've become accustomed to, really.
And how do we go about doing that? Are we talking about changing legislation altogether? I mean, it's pretty clear that an addict on the street or a mentally ill homeless person on the street who may commit a crime habitually and is incarcerated, like I said in the intro, for maybe a day or less than a day, and is back on the street to commit essentially the same crime down the road. This is clearly bogging down the system. It's not a good use of resources for the CPS. It's not good for citizens' money.
Exactly. I think it's important to make a distinction. What kind of crime are we talking about? These aren't the very severe or very serious crimes. These are a lot of times panhandling. These are urinating in public. They're causing a disturbance. So these are very trivial and minor crimes that are traditionally dealt with through the bylaw system, but that causes people to go through courts, and it causes them to get into the justice system. So in a time when really we need to, it's about getting the wrong people out of that system and getting the right people in there and making room for the right people.
And where does the treatment come from? Is it long-term mental illness treatment, or is it a program like Pathways to Housing, like through the Alex?
Well, I think through the City of Calgary, I mean, I think some of those silos are breaking down. I mean, Matt's with the PAC team, I'm with the Alex Pathways to Housing, but we work together all the time. You know, we offer diversion services to get them out of the court system. So I think those partnerships are happening in Calgary. In terms of treatment, I think that's really sort of individual specific. It depends on what type of supports they need. There are programs in Calgary that do offer intensive case management where they can have services for 12 to 24 months with the expectation that they're going to graduate. Or for those very severely mentally ill people that are suffering from an active addiction, programs like Pathways to Housing are intended to be long-term supports. For as long as that client needs supports, they can have it.
It sounds like, and I did a bit of research on the group. Your group's having phenomenal success.
Yep.
And it seems to me that the foundation is in place to really help curb the issue of the mentally ill and the addicted maintaining themselves on the street. Is it an issue of funding?
Yes, in a way it is an issue of funding, and that is that there are so many, such a high percentage of the homeless are experiencing mental illness, and We currently are serving 200 individuals. So it's just a matter of more programming dollars to be able to meet the needs of the homeless in Calgary.
Many other people. I'm going to jump to a quick break here. Folks, we'll be right back. Again, if you have any questions, please give us a call or shoot us a tweet. Stay with us.
I think the 10-year plan to end homelessness in Calgary, I think it's a good plan overall. It has a good message, a good system. We will never be able to end homelessness as something that occurs, but I think as a problem, we could solve it more. We could have institutions in place and have resources available for people who encounter specific problems. And I think that's the hallmark of this program, and I think we should pat ourselves on the back as a city for endorsing such an initiative.
The plan to eliminate homelessness in Calgary is ambitious, but it needs to be more creative, it needs to be more integrated. And while we spoke about addiction and mental health tonight, the other thing that needs to be addressed is the working poor, the people that shelters and agencies are having to deal with that have jobs but can't afford housing. It's an important issue. It needs to be attacked creatively by both the corporate community, the government, and aid agencies to help these people solidify their lives and allow them to reintegrate into a positive way that they can contribute to society.
Hey Calgary, welcome back. Tonight we're discussing the challenges of housing the homeless. Now Matt, as a PACT member, tell me a bit about PACT.
So PACT was a pilot program that joins police officers and mental health workers together with two different and kind of merging perspectives on street issues and issues in the community to bring in more of a prevention and treatment piece as opposed to a Band-Aid. Because street officers are very busy and sometimes they have to go in, they have to deal with a crisis and then move on to the next call.
Sure.
So, and they also don't have all the information. So combining us with mental health workers gives us crucial information on how can we better assist these people. So.
It's a huge advantage, isn't it?
Massive. I have real life examples where I can say that without PACT, without both components, because both are crucial, it could have ended in a major failure for that person. And the community. Sometimes in the case, I gave you the disclaimer that the mentally ill are far less violent, but of course there is a small percentage that might have violence concerns, and by bringing in PACT, we can really help the community and get those people into treatment. So,
yeah, it's a brilliant. Just the sharing of information. It probably should have been done long ago.
Right.
I don't know who can take credit for the pilot, but obviously good thinking, guys. The 10-year plan to end homelessness. In your opinion, and I'll let you each have a moment to answer, how are we doing with that? Are we making progress? Is it the right plan to begin with?
Well, it is, and it really focuses on, well, it says to end homelessness. It's really about removing people from the shelters that they currently live in. 1,200 people have lived over a year in a shelter, and the plan says, let's reduce that number to 7 days, and let's have a program where we can actually move people through and flow them through the system. So absolutely it's the right plan, and it's very difficult. You know, it's interesting, the traditional view was, well, we'll deal with the mental health issues, we'll deal with the addiction issues, and then we'll give you a house. So what we'll do is we'll give a homeless person an appointment time, and we ask them to put it in their BlackBerry and say, show up at this. But well, that's not going to happen. So that's why that Housing First concept that Pathways proposes, that the Calgary Homeless Foundation proposes, is the right one. Stabilize first and then treat while they're there, and using the various levels of treatment. Some people need very intensive treatment, some people need less. So that's what the plan is all about.
It seems like you would concur.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Housing First is the right way to go. It's the dignified way to go with people. And I think that Calgary, if we stick to the plan, we need to end these poor individuals that are living chronically in shelter systems for decades.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Now, 4,000 homeless off the street, it has had its successes. I think, people may argue, though, that again, without changes to legislation, we're still going to have a lot of mentally ill and addicted homeless people on the streets. With that said, where do we go? Who do we attack to change that legislation? Where does it start?
Well, some of the legislation has changed already. So since I first started on PACT, we started looking at not us specifically, but the consulting psychiatrists on our team would look at community treatment orders for mentally ill who fall through the gaps because they have no insight into their illness. So they're not going to be cooperative with their medication. Or there might be a risk of violence, so they'll fall through the gap. Well, we get community treatment orders in place, and usually using the courts as leverage, and they have to receive their medication. So that's legislation that's changed, and it's for extreme cases, but it has made more advances in safety.
Is it enough? Is it enough? Trevor, do you think?
Well, I think that we're seeing a lot of things come together. The provincial government supporting this, of course. The municipal governments are supporting it. There's a program called the Safer Communities. It's 9 ministries that are working together, and they're proposing something called the Opportunity Center. And it's a place where it's really focused on, one of the originators from Pathways actually drafted it and said, you know, it's about having one place for one person and having one plan around that person. And it's a facility, and we're very happy that we're going to be opening one in Calgary as a pilot in June of this year. And it's a place where people can walk in if they need help, or people can, the police, maybe it's an alternative to take you to having them incarcerated, but maybe it's also a place where anyone else can say, you know, can move the people into that direction. And it's not about having more programs, it's about now connecting those people to those programs in an easy way. It's a very complicated system.
It is.
And it's one that even I think all of us have difficulty with, but here we make it easy, an easy point of entry, a single point of entry, and a single plan around a single person.
What would make it easier for Pathways to Housing, as far as legislation is concerned, to tie things together? It sounds like the idea is to consolidate everything. Like there's too many entities who kind of want to get everything together. How do we go about doing that?
Well, I think the Opportunity Center is the one way.
Yeah.
I think building our partnerships, keeping partnerships strong. At Pathways to Housing, we work not just with the police, but with the courts and also with the hospitals. So it's coming there. It's getting there.
It's getting there.
It's the coordination of systems. I think we all worked in programs, and Matt will tell you there was a time when we'd be both pushing in opposite directions, whether it's health services, us, different programs, health assistance agencies. Now it's about sharing the information. There was a thought that we couldn't possibly share any information before, and so everyone just had to kind of do their own thing. Now it's about coordinating that, sharing that information. It's vital that information is shared to help the people.
Yeah, like to add to that, I have real conversations with psychiatrists who beforehand didn't know their patient was in jail. It's very hard to treat someone when you don't know where they are. No. So they would call PACT, and through our information sharing agreement, I will share where they are, charges that are pending. Psychiatrists might request, well, can we get that through mental health diversion? I need them under this community treatment order. All these things are new, and they are very successful.
That is one that I think has to happen. If somebody is facing jail time or the potential for treatment, it's got to be treatment, or else the cycle continues. Like, apparently, I watched the videos that were posted to the Calgary Police Service website. Great videos on homelessness. It's a 3-part series. Folks, if you haven't seen it, make the time to watch it. All very good. $100,000 upwards to maybe $250,000 can be spent on treating a homeless person who is, susceptible and maybe, is a habitual petty crime.
Well, it's interesting because people will say, well, it's too expensive. The 10-year plan is too expensive. The reality behind this is 60,000 times a year, our frontline officers respond to a social disorder call. So that's a call mostly for the vast majority involving homeless. It's about the urinating in public. It's about sleeping in a bank vestibule. It's all those issues around homelessness, 60,000 times a year. When we find out often it's repeat users, it's repeat offenders, I guess, or repeat users of the system. But they're the same people that are repeating and used in the emergency rooms. They're the same ones that EMS are picking up multiple times in a year. So we can do nothing and continue to do what we're doing. And I would say this: build us more jails, give us more cops, and build more hospital rooms. Or we can do something different and make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Treatment.
Absolutely.
Man-hour-wise, how many hours, ballpark? I mean, I'm not going to ask you to narrow it down, but I'm sure there's a lot of police man-hours. I mean, you say 60,000 calls. I mean, what are we talking about
60,000 times a year. We're sending 1 or 2 person cars to deal with an issue that, shouldn't be in the justice system in the first place.
No,
and that's why the Opportunity Center becomes the important point. Our officers, quite frankly, get frustrated because they don't know how to navigate the system. There's stories they'll tell me where they have to actually just sit with someone to try and find a place where they can take them because it's too cold to leave them outside. So it's about making that easier. It's about just an easy flow system where really police just become that outreach team.
Is that where the bulk? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, looking at the Calgary Homeless Foundation stats, over $100,000 just to keep these people on the street, deal with them through the courts, EMS, hospitalizations. At Pathways to Housing, we provide a rent subsidy, psychiatric care, all their medical support, as well as an intensive multidisciplinary team, all for $26,000 a year.
$26,000 a year. Well, John Q. taxpayer hears that, and it's pretty clear.
Cost effective.
It's just, it's a bit of a head scratcher then, isn't it?
Well, and I think the other thing to consider, it's a growing population. In 1994, the mayor was talking the other day, we're saying it's increased tenfold, the homeless population, where the population in Calgary has only increased a percentage or two. So and that's not something that's unique to Calgary, although Calgary is one of the fastest growing areas, but it is something we're seeing everywhere. So it's a challenge for everyone. It's not a problem that you're going to arrest your way out of. It's not a problem that any single agency is going to be able to deal with. It's a problem, it's a societal problem, and we need to come together to deal with it and work with it.
Clearly we do, and we're learning that treatment is the way to go. But what about prevention? How do we prevent people from becoming homeless to begin with? I started the broadcast asking how easily it is, but how do we go about preventing those people from becoming homeless in the first place? Well,
you know, I mean, one of the root causes is education. Can we keep people in the school system so it doesn't start when they're 18 and 19 years old? How about starting in elementary school? How about starting at a much younger age? And it's partnerships like with United Way and some of their programs about keeping kids in school. And we know that that's one of the biggest contributing factors to being homeless at the end of the day. So can we keep people there? And that's what we need to talk about.
Matt, being, you know, essentially one of the first responders, I suppose, frontline, what do you hear from people? When you hear their story, is there a common theme as to how they're to be homeless to begin with?
You know, we're really focused on mental health, so with that subject in particular, maybe taking some of the addiction issues out, there isn't really a common theme. You're getting people from wonderful families, people from broken families, people who well educated but had a psychotic break, and their psychosis has kind of steered them towards homelessness. So for my team, I'm not seeing that any common themes. I will say though that how do you keep them from being homeless? Our team is a good step at that. There's other mental health outreach teams, and what happens is you see people deteriorating, usually due to kind of they're not compliant with their medication, their delusional system starting to really become, I don't know, pervasive again. Our team will go in and we'll take out some of the stressors or help them work through some of the issues to keep them housed. And we do get people who are right on the brink of homelessness, eviction notice, they're getting kicked out in 2 days, and we'll try and steer them into something else. So I think that's how you prevent it, is you need those outreach teams.
Are you seeing the same thing? So I imagine that people come into Pathways to Housing, and there's some sort of an interview process, I would assume?
Yeah, there is. I mean, the only trend that I would say that in dealing with the homeless, and I'm not sure about your guys' experience, but there is a lot of trauma with these people, childhood trauma. And then I think the other trend that we tend to see is that the stigma of mental illness, the stigma of homelessness, they just have a lack of natural supports. They have nobody that they can rely on. And I would say that that's kind of a trend that we see in dealing with the homeless population.
Yeah, to clarify, I do see that, especially when I start to now incorporate more of the addiction issues, especially addiction secondary to the mental illness, then I do see that trend, absolutely.
I noticed in the video on the website, the Calgary Police Service website, that's a really good point, though, that when these people are alienated to the degree that they have no support system, it's that much harder to get out off the streets.
Well, and not just that, but then they fall into shelter systems that becomes their natural supports, that becomes their community, and then that's hard to leave because that's what you know now, and that's your community. So it's very hard. It sounds easy to just remove people from shelters and put them into homes, but that's become their community, and that's become their natural supports.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? It's sad. Folks, our half hour is almost up. After this quick break, we're going to wrap it up and ask our random question. Stay with us.
Although the idea of ending homelessness in 10 years is altruistic, and I can understand where that the desire to do that comes from, it ignores certain relevant factors. One is mental health and the reality of how many people on the streets have mental health issues. Another is addictions, and obviously that's a major factor in homelessness. And another one is the reality of ending homelessness would mean ending jobs for the people that work in the industries now that support homeless people, thereby probably causing a whole bunch of other people to become homeless for lack of jobs.
I think the homeless situation in Calgary is being dealt with on somewhat of a good scale. I just wonder how much money we're willing to pump into a 10-year plan to end homelessness, when calling it ending homelessness is a little bit of an ambitious thing, a creative thing. I mean, how much are you willing to do to somebody that just refuses to have help? The mental health problems, until you cure those mental health problems, giving them some place to live just isn't going to work. They're just going to reject it and do their own thing anyway. And as far as the addiction thing goes, you need to get them off the addictions first before you can find them a place to live.
Okay, so it's time for the random question. Sue, I'll let you do the honors. The way this works, just grab a card, pass it back to me, I'll read it, and we can all weigh in. And the question is, what do you think of my beard? I imagine every question there was, what do you think of my beard?
I think Sue should answer this one first.
What do you think?
You know what? When I first saw it, I thought, that is something else. You've done a really good job there.
It just screams wisdom.
Yeah.
Wisdom. I like it. I like it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Not bad. Not bad. Okay, I will. I'll keep it. Folks, that's basically it, man. I really do appreciate you guys for joining us. Hopefully we have shed some light on what is indeed a very important issue. We want you to keep the conversation going, though. Join us on Facebook. Throw down what you need to on Twitter. Next week, we're talking about politics. How is it that opposition parties make headway in ruling party strongholds? Well, we'll find out. Take care.